Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jamie Machek, and I am the education consultant for the Wisconsin Valley Library Service. And welcome to our presentation of Giving Great Service. We have a lot to cover, so let's dive right in. I recently came across a statistic on this sentence. So any idea on how the rest of this statistic goes? 3 in 4 consumers say a bad interaction with the business can do what, or does what, or has what effect? Any guesses? Feel free to guess something in the chat area. I'll give it a few seconds here. Well, the way that finishes is it can ruin somebody's day. And I've been presenting on customer service for quite a while, at least 8 years. And I thought this statistic really fascinated me because we hear how bad interactions make us not go back to a business, and that spreading negative word of mouth can be detrimental to an organization, or sometimes people leave bad reviews. But this is personal. This is personal to our customers. And what I want you to remember today as we're talking about this is that, we have the power to ruin someone's day, or we have the power to make somebody's day. And we can do that by doing very small and simple things. So I found this statement very simple, yet powerful. So let me back up. There we go. Several of the themes that I'm sharing today are ones that I learned at a Disney Institute training that I took in February on customer service. And that was actually at Disneyland in Anaheim, California. And Disney is known for providing excellent customer service. I also went to a seminar for Zing Train. And Zing Train is based off a deli called Zingerman's. And they have been around for about 40 years in Ann Arbor. And I did this in April. Both were excellent. The interesting thing about Zingerman's is that they have been around about 40 years, but they don't have any franchises. They have never been interested in duplicating what they've done, because the founders of Zingerman's were like, how do we control what kind of meat we're getting at a farm, or how do we control the vegetables like in Tennessee or Texas? So they never had an interest in franchising. What they did do is develop other businesses. So there is a Zingerman's Creamery, there is a Zingerman's Roastery that makes coffee. There is a bake shop. They have about 11 different businesses within Ann Arbor, and that's how they've expanded, if you will, which I think is a really interesting business model. So both of those were excellent trainings, and I'm happy to share a lot of those thoughts and what we learned with all of you today. So some first thoughts before we develop or get into our themes. Customer service is not a one-size-fits-all. You're going to hear me talk about several ideas today, and your library needs to do what makes sense and feels genuine to you. When I went to the Disney training, there were about 50 of us in that training from all over the United States. There were people from wineries. There was a dentist. There was someone who ran a pet hotel, which I didn't even know that pet hotels exist. And they told us right off the bat, we're not going to tell you what to do. We realize a lot of you are not Disney, that you don't have the budget of Disney. So we're not going to tell you what to do. And you need to do what's right for you. You need to do what feels comfortable and what your library can afford to do. Also, it's not always going to look perfect. We're going to fail at customer service from time to time, but it's about improvement. It's always about improvement and what we can do better. Also, this was very prevalent in both trainings, in that our customers and our colleagues are the same. The way that we treat our customers should be the same as we treat our colleagues. Everything we do should be the same. We no longer should differentiate. We no longer should be nice to only our customers and maybe not be as nice to our colleagues. Everything has to be uniform. It's also no longer a nice to have. It's no longer the cherry on top of a sundae. It is a must-have. We are competing for a lot of people's time and efforts and advocacy. And it simply is a must-have. It's something we all have to be doing all the time. I know all of you know what great service looks like. You are likely already practicing a lot of things already. So I'm not here today to tell you what you should be doing or to lecture you. What I'm hoping to do is to provide you some different ways of thinking, some different ideas, and to give you some new tools that you can possibly use in your tool belt. And finally, customer service is always evolving. We never reach that ceiling or that pinnacle. Zingerman's and Disney are at the top of their game when it comes to customer service. They're so good at it that they do trainings for people like me all over the country, all over the world, and they are always evolving. So it's never done. They're never like, okay, we've hit the pinnacle and we're done. We've done the best we can. They are always evolving. And I think that's true for a lot of what we do in libraries. You know, we don't hit that pinnacle. We are always learning. We are always evolving. So it's never done. So again, I have taught customer service courses for quite a while. And based on some of that and based on the things I learned in these trainings, I'm going to use this next hour or less than an hour to cover some ideas using these 5 themes that I think are the most important and practical for us right now. And I'm also hoping that we have a little bit of fun. So let's start with service standards. And what are service standards? And essentially, they are guidelines for how we will treat our patrons in every interaction. And this is based on our organization's mission and vision. So the service standards for your library might look different for the standards at another library. And they might change throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year, because again, customer service is always changing. It's always evolving. Let's look at some very specific standards. Festival Foods is a grocery chain in Wisconsin. Most of you are likely familiar with it. And they do what's called the 10 tile rule, which when they see a customer, any employee sees a customer, they stop what they're doing and greet that employee. Now, Zingerman's does what's called a 10-4 rule, and they practice this all the time. And that is at 10 feet or roughly 10 feet, they will acknowledge somebody with a nod or maybe a wave. And then within 4 feet, they give a greeting. So I like both of those. And you might find that something like 10-4 works better for your library or works better for people who are consider themselves an introvert. Nordstrom is a department store. They're based out of Seattle. They are big on answering the phone in a timely manner. They try to answer their phone within 3 rings, and they rarely try to have people go to voicemail. That's really important to them. Zappos is the online shoe company. Now, because they're completely online, they do everything with chatting and with online agents. And their phone agents are not expected to meet so many phone calls per day. They need to stay on the phone, or they are encouraged to stay on the phone as long as it takes to make a customer happy. So they don't care whether you take 100 calls a day or 1 call a day. If you have to spend 2 hours making a customer happy, that's what they do. That's what they encourage you to do. Let's look at another example. So this is Mac McIntyre, and he's the president of the Innovative Management Group, which is a training firm in Las Vegas. And one time he was asked to consult a hospitality business, and he did this for 2 days. And after the 2 days, he met with all of the higher ups in this company, and they said, okay, so tell us what we can improve on. And we have a list of like 30 things we want to incorporate with our employees. And he laughed and he said, okay, I couldn't even get most of your people to say hi to me or acknowledge me in my observation. So how are you going to get them to do 30 things? It just wasn't practical. So he said to them, let's try to get them to do 4 things. Let's get them to do the 4 S's. First of all, let's get them to see me. Can they give me eye contact? Can they look up at me and not ignore me? Don't make me wait. Can they smile? And that doesn't always mean a big, wide grin. That can at least mean, look, glad to see me. And maybe don't give somebody a blank stare when they approach you. Have them say something. Greet them in a friendly way. And then finally, maybe suggest something. Can I help you find something? Is there something that you need? And Mac said, this is something, these 4 S's is something a lot of businesses don't do. So maybe this is something you could observe or incorporate at your library as a service standard. So how do we develop standards? You might be thinking, we don't have standards in place, Jamie. We kind of know what to do, but we don't really have anything. How do we know what this looks like? Well, Disney uses a compass to drive their service standards because they don't want to make assumptions of what their customers want. But instead of north, west, south, and east, they use something else. So the N in their compass stands for needs. And these are not basic needs, but situational. So if you think of a grocery store, what are people needing when they go to a grocery store? Well, most people want food. The W stands for wants. What do people want at a grocery store? They need food, but what do they want? What do they hope to gain? They probably want a wide selection. They want convenient parking. They want affordable prices. The S stands for stereotypes. What are some stereotypes of grocery stores? What are some preconceived notions? Well, some are that maybe they're busy, they're chaotic, they can be noisy, the prices are too high. And then finally, the E stands for emotions. What are people's emotions when they shop? Are they feeling frustrated? Are they hurried? They know that at a store, we have to see our patrons. We have to see our customers. They're not just issues in front of us. So this compass exercise is something that you could walk through with your staff to determine what your standards are. And again, you want to do what is realistic. You want to do something that you can afford to do and something that is realistic to you. I read a stat recently on voicemail, and I know libraries still receive voicemail. And there was a stat that said the average response rate is like 1 in 20 for a lot of businesses, which I think is crazy. And I'm guessing libraries do a better job in that. Another interesting concept is the customer clock. And this is a great way to learn to, is to meet the needs of our customers. So what does it mean to a library customer when we say soon, or right away, or in just a minute? Keep in mind that your library's clock or your clock might be different from your customers, but only the customer clock matters. So think of at a restaurant where when you're waiting for your food and you ask your server, oh, okay, when can we, you've been waiting a while, when can we expect our food? And your server says, well, in just a minute. But then the food doesn't come out until 10 minutes later. So that was incorrect. The customer heard in just a minute and would have expected the food in just a minute. And when the reality was, it took a good 10 minutes. So we have to be mindful of that customer clock and what we're telling our customers. Another thing to be mindful of is job postings. Is there something in there related to providing great service as you are making new library hires? This was a posting for a youth collection development librarian for MCPL, our resource library. And this is part of the description. And I thought it was really interesting in that the listing also had a listing of personal characteristics that the candidate should have. And there were 13 listed. And look what was at the top. Customer focused was at the top. That was more important than being tech savvy, than being team oriented, than being a self-starter or a lifelong learner. It was customer focused. I'm not saying the other things aren't important because they are, but I found that very interesting. There was another category in this job description under work to perform. Work performed, there were 20 things. And look at the first thing that was listed under that. Anticipates and understands customer needs. I don't know if this was done on purpose or not, maybe. But what do we have in our job postings? So while I take a drink of water, I'm interested in hearing what service standards does your library follow or have in place? And I'm not necessarily talking about things that you just do, but do you have things that you encourage new employees or current employees to do? Do you have something like a 10-4 or a 10 tile or answering the phone within 3 rings? Feel free to share that in the chat. And while you do that, I'm going to go ahead to our next theme, which is cleanliness. And I want to mention that cleanliness was something I had focused on for a long time, and it was something that Disney emphasized as well. And I was really glad to see that or to hear about that when I attended their training. It takes 7 seconds to make a first impression. 7 seconds. And when we maintain high standards of cleanliness, we are going to have better customer satisfaction and likely repeat visits. And having a clean environment does send a message to our customers. What kind of messages are we sending with a clean environment? What are psychological perceptions when it comes to how clean our libraries are? Well, there is a perception of protection and safety. When an environment is clean, it shows safety. It signals to the brains of our customers that this is a safe place. The cleaner the space is, the safer they will perceive it to be. There is also a correlation with stress and anxiety. Clutter, dirt, mess can lead to stress and anxiety with our customers. Our customers are more likely to visit places that are organized and not dirty. And then there's the trust factor. A clean space enhances a business's credibility. So Disneyland opened in Anaheim, California in 1955. And the ideas started for Disneyland in the late 1940s with, of course, Walt Disney. At the time, Walt Disney felt that amusement parks were dirty. He felt they were unsafe, they were unorganized. And he had a mission to create a park that was safe, that was fun, that was clean. He was so adamant about cleanliness that he didn't want guests to see trash. So Disney designed trash cans where you don't see the trash. And we see these all over now. They've pretty much become an industry standard. Also, every 30 feet or about every 27 steps, there is a trash can at a Disney park. I also read that gum is not sold anywhere on the property because of the mess that it makes. So am I saying that all of you right now should go out and get these kinds of trash bins? No, I'm not. Again, we want to look at what is realistic. You know, what can we do? Can we make sure trash is empty? Can we make sure trash is not overflowing? Yes, maybe those are things that we can do. Let's talk about a few other things. Again, it takes 7 seconds to make that first impression. What are some things that we should be mindful of? We have desks, we have workspaces. Some of those can be seen by the public, and we want to make sure that clutter and messy shelves that are seen by our customers or aren't seen rather by our customers. If we have a messy area, we have to make sure that it's not seen. Remember that 7 seconds. Well, the first thing that people see or they notice when they walk into your library is your entryway. What does it look like? It's fall right now, which means leaves are starting to fall. I'm seeing them now more and more on my deck and in my driveway, and they are likely to get into my house or into my garage. What does your entryway look like right now? What does your entryway look like in the winter when you are sanding and salting. Okay, so be mindful of the entryways. Again, what about the garbage cans? I'm not saying you should go get new garbage cans, but if you have a children's event in your meeting space and you're going to be working with food, or you're going to be working with Play-Doh, or you're going to be working with a lot of things, and all you have is one tiny garbage can in that room, that's probably not the best idea. So, what can we do to improve that? Are your tables clean for other people to use in the library? Some of you might allow food or drink. Again, that changes library to library, but what do tables look like when people are done using them? Do you check on your bathrooms every hour, or do a walkthrough, or do you encourage, patrons to say something if a bathroom is untidy? I was just at a store, I'm not going to say which one, the other week, and I had to grab a few things, but I also had to use the restroom. I walked in and it was so unsightly. I walked out. I grabbed what I needed to get, and I'm like, I can wait until I get home to use the bathroom. So it does make a difference. The same with our lights and our lighting. If we have a corner or a section in our library where a lot of lights aren't working and it's dim and dark, again, what message does that send? What is the perception of that? Do we have plants, and do they look healthy? Or are they, do you have some plants in an area that you're picking up the dead leaves every day? Or maybe you can't even keep up with picking the dead leaves on those plants. What does that look like? And finally, our signage. We could do a whole webinar workshop just on signage alone. But the basic thing is that signage should all look uniform. It should look presentable. We should have standard signs for most things. They should be computer generated and not handwritten. We all have computers and printers at the library. And if they are starting to look old, if they have, old tape on them, it's time to replace them. Again, what messages are we sending? I have a quick story for you. I was at a fast food restaurant many years ago, and it was one of those places, again, I'm not going to say which one, but it's one of those places where you order at the counter, you take your number, and you go sit down. And it was on a Friday, just after the lunch hour. This place is near a high school, so I imagine they got bombarded with a lot of high school students and a lunch crowd. Well, okay, so I took my number, I'm walking around, and I literally cannot find one table that doesn't have dirty dishes or something. And finally, I find one. And then what annoyed me even more is that I'm looking at the counter, or I'm looking at where you order the food, and there are like 3 managers and like 4 workers standing around. And I get it that they had a rush. I get that, but it still didn't look good. I'm like, this is a and then soon after I sat down, I noticed other people walking around. They were doing the same thing I'm doing. They're looking around for a clean table. And I almost wanted to wave my hands and say, you have a big problem out here. Like this is not the time to be refilling the soda cups or or checking on the napkin dispenser. Like that is fine. This needs to get cleaned up right away for your customers that are coming in now. And I never went back to that place. I have yet to be back. This was about 10 years ago. So it does make a difference. So I'm interested in knowing, what do you do to keep the library clean? Are there things that you do specifically? At Disney, they are very big with, if you see it, you own it. If you see trash, you pick it up. Is that the kind of mantra that you encourage among your staff? So feel free to share that in the chat. Based on the other question about standards, Heidi said in the chat, we have a greeting rule. Everyone that comes in, we welcome. We have found this very important with our teams. I love that. Thank you, Heidi. So again, think about things that you do to keep your library clean. And maybe a lot of these things are things you're not even aware of. They might just be things that you do naturally. Hopefully they are. Okay, let's move on to our third theme. And this is language, and more importantly, positive language. I love this quote by Yehuda Berg, who is an international speaker and author. And it talks about how words are powerful. We can do a lot of harm with words, and we can do a lot of good with words. The language we use in customer service plays a big role in forging long-term relationships with our customer. Think of when you go somewhere and someone says something rude to you, or maybe they say a few things that are rude to you. And that has the power again to ruin or make someone's day. That might mean you don't go back to that place based on the language and how somebody spoke to you. I remember many years ago, I had AAA, and one Saturday I locked my keys in the car. And of course, it was very frustrating. And I called AAA, and I had to wait a little bit and spoke to an agent. An agent came on the phone, and I explained what happened. And this agent said, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened, Jamie. That is not a fun way to start your Saturday, is it?" And that comment made me laugh. And I said, "No, you're right. It's not." And I felt like that empathy went a long way. People, there are times where maybe we can't allow everything, or there are times where we have to say no, and we don't like saying no. So can we say, I understand how frustrating it must be, or instead of no, could we say, as much as I wish I could? That's a better response than just saying a flat out no. Instead of saying, I don't know, and especially if we're working at the desk or if we're around somebody, can we say, that's a great question, let me find out. We don't have to know everything in the library, and we don't have to know everything in that moment, but can we try to find out? Can we get somebody's number and call them back? If there is something wrong, like our website is down, if our bathroom is a mess, if our sidewalk is slippery, let's say the sidewalk was shoveled, but we all of a sudden had a couple more inches of snow and no one was able to get to that or attend to that. And somebody says, well, your sidewalk, I just want you to know your sidewalk's a little slippery. As part of its initiative to deliver great service, Disney spends a lot of time training employees on language, and staff are, first of all, staff are called cast members, and all of their visitors are called guests. And some of you might have experienced this if you visited Disney. Here are another couple examples on your screen. Ticket takers are called greeters, and they never say expensive or cheap. They say higher cost, lower cost, costs a little more, costs a little less. They also never say that the park is crowded. They'll say it's popular. So if someone is on the phone with a potential customer who says, I want to bring my family to the park on New Year's Eve, but I heard it gets busy, that person might say, well, yes, that's a popular time for people to visit. They're not going to say, well, yes, it's too crowded, you shouldn't come. So let's look at some other examples. And these are positive phrases that Zingerman's uses. So instead of can or may I help you, which isn't bad, this is not something bad to say. The thing that makes it not great is that it's not a conversation starter. So how about, what can I help you find today? What can I help you find? Because if someone says can or may I help you, someone could say no and leave it at that. It doesn't open the door to a conversation starter. Instead of I have to do this, that sounds forced. So you could say I'm going to, or I'd like to. I have to, in order to open the meeting room for you, I have to get my supervisor to open the meeting room for you. I'm going to get my supervisor. Okay. Do you notice that subtlety sounds a little bit more positive? Or instead of anything else, is that all? That could indicate we're trying to get rid of somebody. So how about, what else can I help you with today? Or what other questions do you have? And then hold, please. Again, not a bad thing to say, but if we say to somebody, may I put you on hold? They could say no, and we should give people that option. We don't want to assume that people want to hold for us and wait. We should ask, may I put you on hold? And they could say no. Also, we are never going to express our disgust or annoyance with our patrons, ever. We might be thinking things in our head, but remember, the things we do at the library every day could be brand new to somebody who's walking in for the first time, or walking in who hasn't been in the library in 20 years. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that in a bit. So I want you to share, and again, I'm going to keep going just for the sake of time, but if you think of something, feel free to share what positive language that you use in the library. Let's move on to our next theme, and that is empowerment. And staff empowerment, how we empower our staff. As a manager, how we empower staff, and as equals, as we work side by side, how we empower each other can play a huge role in providing great service. So Kelly Oxley is the senior duty manager at Disney, and she oversees all of the on-site park employees, or cast members, as they're called. Disney trains its employees for 6 to 8 weeks before any of them are allowed to interact with customers. They actually have a separate Disney University. Again, this might not be practical in the library. And she does a lot of providing of feedback, because she does a lot of observation within the park. And she talked to us about how well trained that the cast members are. Again, they are trained for 6 to 8 weeks before they step on the park. They are given a lot of feedback when she's observing them. She also emphasized that mistakes are fixable. So a security guard, might see a kid drop an ice cream cone in the park. And in that moment, the security guard can say, oh, I saw that. Here's a gift certificate for a free cone, or let's get you another cone. They're trying to make things as nice as possible for their guests. She said one time something happened with an ice cream cone, and somebody comped that family of 4 to a nice dinner. And so that was a coachable moment. Like, she had to say, okay, like, maybe we don't do that next time. But she said, but was that a terrible mistake? Did that like break the bank of Disney? No, that was a teachable, fixable moment. They're also encouraged to make decisions. And she said, when she talks to higher ups at Disney, a lot of times they freak out that, like, we shouldn't always allow people to make these decisions. And she'll have to remind them, hey, no one is giving away the farm. Even the person who gave away the family of 4, the dinner, that didn't break the bank. So we have to learn to trust our employees to make decisions. They also emphasize purpose over task. And what does that mean? So in this photo, Grace is cleaning Minnie's ears on a statue, because cleanliness, of course, is important. And if a family comes up to Grace and says, what are the directions to Fantasyland? Grace is not going to say, well, I can't help you right now. My job is to clean Minnie's ears. Grace is going to stop what she's doing and not just point people to Fantasyland, but she might even actually walk people over to Fantasyland, because the park is so huge. So in that instance, Grace is prioritizing purpose over task. Her task is to clean Minnie's ears in that moment, but her purpose is to show that family how to get to Fantasyland. In the 1960s, there was a race to get to the moon. And during a visit to the NASA Space Center in 1962, President Kennedy noticed an employee carrying a broom. And he interrupted the tour. He walked over to the man and he said, hi, I'm Jack Kennedy. What are you doing? And the employee responded, I'm helping put a man on the moon, Mr. President. So this employee didn't say, I'm sweeping the floor. He said, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. And that statement shows that everybody was supporting the mission in that NASA Space Center. Everybody who works at the library, whether they have their MLS, whether they do not, no matter what their role, everybody is supporting the mission in the library. Everyone who works there matters. And again, customer service, I mentioned, is not a one-size-fits-all. Well, neither are our customers. And we should have the ability and the empowerment to read the room. So if someone walks into your library and says, hi, I found out today that my mom was diagnosed with a rare cancer, stage 4. I'm looking for more information on this. That's probably not the time to keep smiling and say, great, how can I help you? What kind of cancer is it? Now, I know that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that might be the time to say, I'm sorry. How can I help you with this? Or maybe you take that person to a more private area. So in that case, we're not going to do the smiling. We're going to show empathy. That's the way we're going to do the 10-4 rule. And again, we have to read the room a little bit with our customers. Disney employees are very good at reading the room as well. And their phone staff is trained to do this when they are talking to customers. So they get people who have all kinds of budgets who want to come to the theme park. And they are trained, to read that room. So if they're talking to a family and the family says, this is our budget. We want a hotel where we're just going to sleep and shower. We plan on spending like all day at the park or maybe 2 full days at the park. We don't have a lot of time to be here. So that person is going to say, okay, so you're going to get this day pass. Here are some economy hotels, not cheap. Here are some economy hotels I recommend. They're not going to recommend a multi-day pass or a weekly pass to everybody because they know not everybody, that's not in everybody's budget and it's not going to work for everybody. So they learn to read the room. We can also encourage and reward great service amongst each other. And this was something we did at the Zingerman's training. I really liked it. It was called a web of appreciation. And on the sheet on the left was everybody's name who was in the training. And then they had everybody's names on the right-hand side. And when someone did something nice or something you appreciated, you drew a web and wrote it down. So this is what it looked like at the beginning. At the end of the 2 days, the photo on your right is what it looked like at the end of the 2 days. So it was everything from like, well, Aaron talked to me at lunchtime, or someone lent me a cough drop because I was coughing. These didn't have to be big things, but what a cool thing this web looked like at the end of the training. Think if we had something like this weekly in our staff areas, this web of appreciation amongst our staff and how it would build positivity. So Zingerman's does some documentation. They do a code green and a code red. I'll explain the code red in just a minute. But code green documents positive encounters. And the staff person who witnesses it fills it out. And they ask things like, what did the customer love? What was the temperature check of the customer? Or how did they rock the customer's world? And again, the customer temperature. And they have them describe the situation. So they keep documentation of all of these positive things. And they are called code greens. Okay, let's move on to our last theme, and that is failure. So as I mentioned before, we are not always perfect at customer service because we're human. It's all about learning from our mistakes. It's all about improvement. So what do we do when we fail? Well, Zingerman's has 5 simple steps for complaints. First of all, we acknowledge it. We acknowledge that we made a mistake. We're not going to deny it. We're not going to lie about it. We acknowledge it and we apologize. And I always say, apologize one time. If we keep saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, it doesn't sound sincere. And really, when we make a mistake, our customers want us to fix it. They want us to make it better. So saying 1 I'm sorry or 10 I'm sorry is not going to fix the mistake. So say it one time. We have to take action and try to make things right. We thank the customer for bringing it to our attention, and then we document it. And I'm going to show you what that looks like in a minute. What are some failure phrases that we can do? What are some things we can say that allow us to establish trust? I understand why you're upset. So we're showing that empathy. Anyone would find this difficult. Your reactions are normal and valid. And if I were in your shoes, I would feel the same way. I can understand how you feel. Zingerman's also does code red documentation. I just talked about the code green. And the code red is when they have a service failure. So either a failure, they receive a complaint, or they get a suggestion. And we might experience all three of those at our library, and they're all good. They're all good things to document. So they document what happened. They also do a temperature check. And then how did you handle it? How did you make it right? And then how do you follow up? Now, because Zingerman's is a business that sells things, they might do a refund. They might do, a free something with something. Those are the types of things that they can do. And that is going to look different than what we do in the library. The cool thing about the code green and the code red documentation is that you might start noticing things. If you start noticing a lot of suggestions or a lot of complaints or a lot of concerns, it might spark an idea to maybe change something. Maybe it's time to change something at our library. We've been thinking about this anyway. Maybe it's time to change it. And then you also have that documentation for succession planning. So at WVLS, since attending this training, I have developed what's called a SCA. It's a suggestion, complaint, compliment, accolade form. This is a Google form, and we have started using it at WVLS. And actually, Christy is using it, and we are incorporating staff members incrementally. So Christy and I are the first two to have used it. And we basically do this. We fill out a form whenever we get a suggestion or a concern or a compliment or an accolade. We want to record the good things that we're doing, but we also want to record the things that we can be doing better. Here are some phrases that could have a calming effect when we do fail or when someone is upset. Please tell me what happened. Again, a lot of times people want to be heard. If they are heard, especially if they're agitated, they're immediately going to calm down. We are going to make it right for you. Or I am here to help and serve you, or I will get to work on this immediately. Or I want to resolve this for you, and we value you. So all of these phrases can be really good when someone is upset. When we talk about failure, sometimes things are beyond our control. So maybe you don't get delivery. Maybe your library doesn't receive delivery on a day and someone comes in and wants their book. Okay, that's not your fault. There are things that we can't control. But even if things aren't our fault, they are our problem in that moment. So is there something else I can help you check out? Is there something else we can help you find that's here? I'm sorry that this happened. What else can we do to make it right? Okay. Also, can we turn a failure into an opportunity? Can we turn a problem into something positive? And I think for the most part, a lot of times we can. So to recap our themes, these are the things that we talked about this afternoon. We covered some service standards and what your library does or what it might want to consider doing. We talked about the importance of cleanliness and the message that it sends about your library, the positive language and the effect that that can have, the importance of empowering our staff and empowering one another and ways that we can show appreciation to one another. And then what can we do when service fails? So remember that I said at the beginning, customer service is not a one-size-fits-all. It's going to change for what your library is, and it could change in different situations. Also, if you have some people on staff, or maybe you yourself are struggling with some of these things, remind yourself that change is not going to happen overnight. It could take some time to make some changes. So what can you get staff to do or encourage them to do? Can you pick one thing to work on, for the next month? Okay, now they've mastered that. Can we move on to something else? Like, now we're going to work on this. It's not also going to be perfect. It's not going to look perfect all the time. And as I mentioned before, it's not a nice have. It's not a nice to have. It's not the cherry on top. It's a must have. So what can you implement in the next month? We're almost at the end of September. What can you implement? What do you think you could implement for October? Either you personally, or if you're a director, a library director, what could you have your staff work on? Or what could you have your staff implement? I'd like you to think about this for a bit. And again, if you're comfortable, feel free to share that in the chat area. And I'd like to wrap up by sharing a few thoughts today. And that is, we have an opportunity right now. We have a lot of things challenging us in libraries. We always have, and we likely always will. But when it comes to giving great service, we have an opportunity to shine. We have an opportunity to go the extra mile, because giving great service doesn't have to cost us anything. And we can do a lot of things in a low-cost way, because we know the value of patron advocacy and positive word of mouth. So we can look at this as, wow, okay, this is a time for us to really shine. So speaking of opportunities, let's look at an example. Disneyland has a parade every day at 3 o'clock. It is literally called the 3 o'clock parade. So our trainer named Christopher, one of our trainers worked in the park for many years. This is Christopher. And he said, as an employee, do you think I was ever asked, what time does the 3 o'clock parade start? And we all laughed. We said, yes, you probably were asked that. And he said, do you think I said to that guest, duh, it's at 3 o'clock? Well, of course we didn't. Remember, I mentioned that there's no such thing as a dumb question, and there isn't. So of course he would tell people that the parade started at 3, but he would take that a step further. He used this as an opportunity to really shine. So he would say, well, where do you think you'll be at 2:30? And they might say, well, we're going to be at Magic Kingdom. And he would say, okay, great. So around 2:50, you're going to head to the Snow White statue and stand on the other side of the street. And that's going to give you the best photo opportunity for the parade. And make sure you're there at 2:50, because the parade begins at 3 p.m. So he could have just said 3 p.m. and kept on doing what he was doing. He took this question as an opportunity to take service a step further. Let's look at another one. This is Jenny, and she was one of our Zingerman's trainers. She was fantastic. Before Jenny was a trainer at Zingerman's, she worked in their mail order business. And she told us how back in May of 2020, we remember what May of 2020 looked like, right? Things were difficult. Supply orders were backed up. And it was Mother's Day approaching, and a lot of things, supply chains were down, and they had to call a number of people and tell them that their things that they ordered weren't going to make it in time. She was talking on the phone to this young man who had ordered a coffee cake for his mother for Mother's Day, and she said he was really upset. And she said to him, well, okay, we can give you a refund, we can give you a coffee cake, but it's going to be, it's going to be delivered a few days late. We can send something else, like maybe there's like some coffee we could send her, like offering all these things. And she said he just was not happy with any of those responses. And finally, she said to him, I really want to make this right for you. What can I do to make this right for you? And he said, I need my mother to not be mad at me. I need her to know that I tried. And Jenny said, do I need to call your mother and tell her that this isn't your fault? And he said, yes. Yes, you do. So Jenny got this phone number of this man's mother and called his mother. And she even had a copy of his order form ready in case she needed to send that to his mother, like text it or email to show, yes, your son tried. This is our fault. But what a great, and again, that didn't cost anything. It wasn't about the product. It wasn't about, needing something else. He was worried about his mother being mad. And she took it that extra mile. She looked at that situation as an opportunity. Another woman in our training used to work in retail at a clothing store in the mall. And I'm not going to say which one it is, but she said they had to approach a customer 3 times and get a no before they would stop. So if she approached someone and said, can I help you find something? And that person said, no, that's 1 time. 5 minutes later, would you like to try that on? No, that's 2. Same person. Our jewelry is 10% off. Would you like to find something that matches? No, that's 3. At that point, she could stop approaching that customer. So they had to approach customers at least until they received 3 no's. How awful. And we asked her, how was that? She said, terrible. It was terrible. I'm so grateful that I don't work in that kind of profession. And we all said, yes, we agree. So again, just to reiterate, we have the privilege and the opportunity to make somebody's day every day. A bad interaction can ruin someone's day. A good interaction can make their day. And we don't have to get no for 3 times. We can ask somebody if they need help and they can say no, and we can walk away. So we not only have the ability to make somebody's day every day, but we get to serve and help our community. What a privilege that is. What a privilege. So I want to thank all of you for participating. Thank you for staying with me during the glitch. We only have a few minutes. And Christy, if you need to run, feel free to just end the recording, and we'll work on that. But I can stay on for a few minutes if anyone has questions. And I want to, thank you for being with me here today. Again, I know you're all doing wonderful things. You know what good service looks like. You know what great service looks like. You're doing a lot of these things already. What can we do to take things up, even another notch? So Heidi, some good things happening, suggestions in the chat. When someone has a late fee, how can we help you renew your materials? Please give us a call, or would you like to see? Yes, I love that. I love that. Okay, well, my email address is on the screen, and most of you I work with. So if you have a follow-up question, feel free to share that. Again, there will be a quick survey when we end today. I appreciate you doing that. Thank you for sticking with us. We were disconnected. Christy, this is why we have a moderator. This is why we have someone else behind the scenes. When this stuff happens, you just never know. So thank you all again, and I wish you a great rest of your day and week.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.